Okay, our next topic, engaging supports and implementing your plan. Looking at this slide here, we see a green passive face and we see a red aggressive face. And in the middle is the sweet spot. That's the assertive face. And that's what we want to learn to be an effective advocate. And this is for NDIS, this is for education, this is for lots of different things in your life. It just takes practice, and everyone has the ability to be assertive and make assertive statements. So we're going to give you some tips now on how to get that little sweet spot to make great changes in your life. Assess your style. Do you voice your opinions, or do you remain silent? Are you using I statements often? They're quite beneficial. Practice saying no. It's a hard one sometimes, but practice voicing your needs and saying no when you have to. Maybe rehearse what you want to say, writing them down and reading over them. And even in a meeting, if you have to read it rather than say it, absolutely fine. Use assertive body language. You can see body language when we're talking on a Zoom or face-to-face, but even via a phone call, which is how most of our meetings are done. Sitting up straight, holding yourself confident, even wearing confident clothes, all help to give you that assertive feeling and personality at that time. Keep emotions in check. Sometimes this is a hard one. If you have an important message to consider, important message, write it down. So again, you can say it rather than allowing your emotions to take hold of you. And practice. It's going to build confidence. If you can read it the night before, read it in the morning, when it comes time to that meeting, you're going to know what to say, and it's going to come a lot easier for you. So we like to think of it as 3 C's. Confidence, you believe in your ability to handle the situation. Clear, your message that you need to say is clear and easy to understand. And controlled, you deliver information in a calm, controlled manner. They're just a few tips. We've got other videos on our website that go into meetings and assertive advocacy as well. Now, record keeping for self-managers. It's definitely something that we touch in our webinars from Family Advocacy. Look out for those self-management webinars. But it's likely that you may be audited at some stage if you are self-managing. It's not a huge thing to worry about. It's not a big process, but it's made so much easier if you maintain your records and keep relevant invoice and accompanying evidence for the claim. To track your NDIS claims, you need to keep the record of payment request number, the invoice details, and the claim dates. Some people prefer to do this via paper, others prefer digital, so it's completely your choice. But it's always good to have those up to date and ready if that ever comes your way.
Okay, so preparing to engage services. So obviously we've spoken about preparing a vision statement, and that's really important. Identifying valued roles and linking those roles to your NDIS goals. And the NDIS is about people with disabilities having choice and control over their lives. So that's why we're encouraging participants and their families to consider self-management. The self-management guide is the go-to document for self-managers and for anyone considering to self-manage an NDIS plan. If you're not sure about this, you can choose to manage a portion of your plan until you feel comfortable to take on more. So this guide explains what you need to know about self-management, and we will keep you up to date with any of our upcoming self-management workshops. If you're on our mailing list, if you're not, all you need to do is contact us and we can put you on our mailing list, so you'll be receiving frequent updates of what's happening. So this guide covers case study examples. It highlights the benefits and your responsibilities, criteria for self-managers, ways to identify what you can buy with your NDIS funds, how to pay and claim your supports, and as Mandy was talking earlier, it also covers some more detail on your record keeping as well. So preparing to engage services. So finding a good providers and avoiding the dodgy ones. That's the big thing, because there's both out there. So how do we know what ones are the good ones? It can be a little bit challenging at times. So the NDIS Code of Conduct, all service providers, whether they are NDIS registered or not, are legally obliged to meet the standards of the NDIS Code of Conduct. So it's really helpful to know that Code of Conduct. That way, if something is gone amiss, you can check that Code of Conduct to see if anyone is operating outside the guidelines. And then you can follow the process of what you need to do. Know your budget, so you can advise the service provider of the needs of your family member and plan supports within your budget. Utilise the NDIS Quality and Safeguard Commission's website and complete the free training for workers. That way you will have an understanding of what you can expect of workers and their obligations. There is also an information about providers' obligations as well. That's accessible to families and participants to view that. Prepare a job description for workers to understand their work and responsibilities and identify the skills. A job description can actually strengthen capacity of your worker. They'll have a better understand the parameters of their job. Prepare to service providers, independent support workers, and utilise the lists above. And understand and schedules of support.
A couple of things to remember when you are engaging with different services is you don't have to provide it. Much more beneficial to provide a plan. Actually, monetary value. We don't need to let them know how much money in your plan. You can choose a short service agreement for just a couple of months and do a little tester, see if it works out, as opposed to, joining for a year or more. And you can choose how much funding you want to allocate to that particular provider. It can be helpful to share your goals and a description of the supports you need, especially around vision and interests, because you may wish to find a like-minded support person. And again, that might be your non-negotiable. Agency managed budgets must engage registered providers. Obviously, there's a lot more information around registered providers, etc. If you need to discuss that, give us a call or have a look on the NDIS line. You can directly employ support workers. If you've never looked into this, it's definitely an area where you need to learn a little bit more, but once you have all the skills, it can be extremely beneficial and plain sailing. But you just need to do your homework. So up on screen, you can see lots of different things here to think about: Safe Work Australia, insurance, fair work issues, etc. And of course, every family situation is going to be different. Becoming an employer means you have legal obligations to meet, as I said, with ATO and fair work, etc. Come along to one of our self-management workshops if you'd like to learn more about that. When it comes to coordination of supports, like we discussed earlier, COS, it's great to know the role of a support coordinator, because there's far more than you would think. Most people would think the role is much bigger. There's also a very broad range of ability and quality between support coordinators, and you need to find what works for you. Support coordinators are funded to build capacity, support the implementation of plans, and upskilling self-managed participants and plan nominees. They're there to mitigate and resolve crises. It's better to have your coordinator of supports and other service providers as separate entities to avoid conflicts of interest, like I mentioned earlier. If you are not funded for a cause, it's not in your plan, it's important to identify how much support your LAC can give you, especially if it's your first or second plan and you've got to learn how to implement it. If they can't provide that help afterwards, if they're too busy, then that's perfect reason for you to ask for cause funding in your plan. And it's also important to ensure that a cause has knowledge in your areas of support. So if your family member has complex medical needs or specific needs of their disability, if they don't know it, they need to find out or find someone that is very experienced in that. Or maybe you want a full life of genuine inclusion. And if your cause is constantly, guiding you into segregated areas of therapy and life, it's just not going to sit well. It's not going to align with your family's vision. So it's important to find a cause that will work for you.
So the NDIS Quality and Safeguard Commission, there's many resources in this site. So service providers and workers should at a minimum be familiar with the quality and safeguard workers training modules and resources. Families can also access these training modules to understand what to expect from your workers and service providers. So again, knowledge is power. Be upskilled. Don't rely on the services to know their roles, as we often hear this is not the case. So the NDIS Code of Conduct, we have mentioned this. This is there's more to the this is more or less a summary. So while we're on the topic of knowledge, again, we need to make sure we keep these things handy. You don't have to know all of these points, but it's helpful to have it on hand and even have it around the house at home. If you've got a support team that come into your home, have it so that it's easily accessible. That way, if there's an issue, you can quickly check it and see, is this breaching the code? How do I manage it? What do I need to do? It's relevant for any worker or provider, regardless of whether they're NDIS registered or not. And you can always call our advocacy and leadership team if you need to work through a situation. Things to consider when you're engaging your supports: knowing your needs and expectations and communicating these clearly. What skills, training and values and personal qualities you're looking for in a support person. What are your expectations of the support, when and where, and the days and times? NDIS Workforce Capability Framework will build your knowledge from the perspective of a participant, provider and support worker. So you'll find clear practical examples and be able to establish shared language of what good looks like for participants when receiving NDIS services and supports. And the NDIS Disability Support Worker Costing Model, it's got a very interesting name. It's Disability Support Worker Costing Model Assumptions and Methodologies for 2022 to 2023. It's helpful when you're determining things like how much should you pay an independent contractor. So some independent contractors are pressuring families to pay full NDIS rates without providing all the conditions the NDIS rate is meant to cover. So this information will allow you to have that knowledge and have that conversation about negotiating rates. Now, if your worker is charging the full rates, are they also providing a backup service if they are off sick? So they're the sorts of things that the NDIS rates are meant to cover, and this document is going to be helpful for you to have those conversations. Social, Community and Home Care and Disability Services Industry Award, or it's also known as the SHADS Award, is the award that covers the majority of NDIS core support services. So if you choose to directly employ, you will become familiar with this, but it may also be helpful in other areas. So it's there, it's accessible online. It's not an easy document to interpret. So if you're needing some support as a direct employer, you could actually engage a HR company to assist you with that. You will need to make your own individual inquiries to identify if a service or a support is a good fit for your family member. You should shop around and see what's available and who suits your family and your family member best. So, write a list of questions and do some canvassing, ring companies and service providers. Personally, I prefer to engage supports who do not have formal disability support training. I seek people who have values that align with our family values. It's really hard to teach values as they are developed over many years. However, you can teach skills. Regardless of training and qualifications, any new support will require training to learn the individual's needs, the individual needs of your family member. And it's also the most important thing is to accommodate your family members' needs to build confidence in any new support in a way that suits them, not just have this random turn up on your doorstep and they've got to take off and do something that with somebody that they don't know. That's really important. This is our Family Advocacy NDIS Service Agreement Guide, and this is on our website. So you should always read a service agreement carefully before signing it. You can request to take some time to read it and get some advice. You may even request some changes. There is no guarantee that they will take on those changes. If you ask a provider to make changes, they may not, but you can always ask. A service agreement can be a very useful document to hold providers accountable. But if participants are not careful, you could enter into a contract that may not meet your needs. So you'll find our NDIS service agreement guide on the Family Advocacy website, and it goes into service agreements in a lot more detail. And there's an example there as well to check out.
Something that we like to inform people of is the medical model and the social model and how they interact. So a medical model life is filled with therapy, and it's not really a life. And then we look at the social model, which is the real life side of things. To successfully advocate for a good life, you need to understand these differences. And of course, when we're in the therapies and the allied health, they're all talking in that medical model style, and we want to get out of that and talk in that real lifestyle. So best practice therapy typically occurs in real life environments, and this means that therapists will travel to the participant in various environments, like Joe was saying, to the dance classes, and they would need to charge for travel and include this in their quotes and reports for NDIS planning processes. Best practice therapy typically also means that families would be supported to include realistic opportunities for families to practice new skills within the relevant real-time daily life. A medical model filled with therapy is not a life, and a social model life is real. This is just one example of how therapy practice can be put in place, training both formal and informal supports to implement practice and rehearsal, developing capacity within daily and weekly routines. The therapist may only need to step in every 4 to 6 weeks then, or at stages of therapy goals when they're achieving their goals, and following stages, and be ready to implement the next stage. Joe, what's your example with Rachel?
Yeah, so to build skills to use a communication device, she wanted to learn to play the piano. So that was going to build her dexterity skills to access the device. So having piano lessons actually gave her skills and stronger access for communication.
Perfect. There we go. Some hot tips: keep records over the whole year, and if any problems or issues and outcomes, good and bad, in preparation for your plan review. It's easy to see how fast years go by, so keeping good notes and records around the whole year. Link all funding requests to the evidence. If you're having trouble gathering the evidence from supports, if it's long waiting lists in your area to get into allied health, you can negotiate a shorter plan that includes that budget to gather the evidence. Ensure you receive documentation of any agreements, as we said, made in the AAT process, and you need to physically upload them yourself. And never assume NDIA have all documented evidence for current and previous plans. It may be up to you to remind them of what the history has been. You need to stay in that driver's seat and control all your information. I think we'll leave it there on that one. If we look at other supports, they're always out there. There's new ones coming along, but these ones are fairly standard. Ask Izzy is the government's, I suppose, search engine that includes all different types of help, but disability advocacy is a good place to start. Carers Gateway to help all your carers, parents and family members out there. Carers New South Wales, Carers Australia, maybe particular support groups in your area, and capacity building organisations so you can build your knowledge. Of course, one of those within family advocacy. Always good to know that resourcing inclusive communities sites within family advocacy. This is one of the projects started in 2010. My Home, My Way, School to Work, Inclusive Lives. These are all various life stages, but also areas that we are working on with webinars and resources, etc. So keep an eye out on the event page for that. The address is up on the screen, and there's also a tab on our workshop, on our websites. And of course, all our phone numbers are there. You can find all these on the web page as well. And we're always available to take your call. If there's anything you've heard today in the webinar that didn't make sense or you want to know more of, give us a call and we can unpack it in a deeper, more personalised way with you. But otherwise,
I'll just add, Mandy, if you check out our website as well, we have our NDIS discussion series that happens each most months. So check our website to see the upcoming dates.
Beautiful. And get to our mailing list if you already aren't there. So I would like to thank Gloria and Mark, who have been our fantastic interpreters today. And thank you for tuning in and listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.